You see, the Camino Portuguese is supposed to be the quiet one, so what is everyone doing here? For 4 years, pilgrims heard, skip the craft of the French way, walk the Portuguese way, and for a while that actually made sense. But last year the Portuguese Central and Coastal route together reached almost 190,000 pilgrims. The coastal route is no longer a quiet secret, and by the final stretch the quiet alternative can suddenly feel like a Black Friday with backpacks. But maybe the real problem is not the crowds. Maybe it is what happens to the spirit of the way. Let me explain. But before we talk about the bubble, we need to clear up one thing. The Camino Portuguese is not the one Camino. So when someone says, I walk the Portuguese way, the real question is, which one? Traditionally, the Camino Portuguese starts in Lisbon and moves north through Portugal towards Porto. But Porto is where the modern confusion really begins. From here, pilgrims usually start talking about three main options, and the first one is the central route. This is the more classic inland route. It goes through towns, villages, forests, churches, old roads, and the places where the Camino feeling can be stronger and more traditional. The second one is the coastal route. This is the one many people dream about now. Ocean, boardwalks, sunsets, seafood, very dangerous for people who like beautiful things and dramatic walking photos. And there is a senda litoral. This is not always treated as the complete separate Camino, but more like a seaside option that follows the water even more closely in some sections. You see, many pilgrims mix it with the coastal routes, which is why people often get confused when planning. And then there is also the spiritual variant. This is the beautiful detour near the final part of the Camino way, connected with the legend of arrival of the body of St. James by boat. Some pilgrims choose it because they want something quieter, more symbolic, and a little different before reaching Santiago. So already we have Lisbon, Porto, central route, coastal route, senda litoral, and spiritual variants, which means one very important thing. Two people can be doing the same Camino and saying, I walked the Camino Portuguese, and they might have walked completely different Caminos. Which Camino Portuguese are you talking about? And I'm really curious about your experience. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from, your country, which is the route you're walking or you want to walk, and which is the month you walk. So for example, Canada, Portuguese, Central, and June. You see, because this is exactly why the Portuguese is so tricky to talk about. One person may walk it in May and call it peaceful, another can walk it in August and wonder if they accidentally joined the walking festival with backpacks. And this matters because the Camino Portuguese is not a new trend. Pilgrims have walked north from Portugal to Santiago for centuries. So this way has history, but in the modern times, in the modern Camino world, it stayed quiet for the long time. The Camino Francés became the famous one. The Portuguese way became an alternative. The one people recommended when someone said, I want to walk the Camino, but I don't want the crowds. And for a while, that advice made sense, until someone started following it, and that's when the numbers changed the story. Last year, the Portuguese central and coastal routes together reached almost 190,000 pilgrims. This is not a hidden alternative, this is the Camino giant. But this year is where it gets even more interesting, because the Portuguese route are no longer just growing quietly behind the Camino Francés. They are moving closer than ever to it. Think about it, 88,000 pilgrims on the French way and 85 in the Portuguese Camino. That is becoming one of the main crowds. And this is where the bubble begins. Many people are still planning the Camino Portuguese way based on the old reputation, while walking it's the new reality. Are you walking the right Camino Portuguese? Download our Camino Portuguese route clarity guide and discover which route matches the Camino you're dreaming of. There is a link in the description, or maybe just over there. And honestly, we understand why. We have walked the Portuguese way several times, and there is a reason people fall in love with it. So yes, the Portuguese way makes sense, and this is exactly why the bubble is growing, because when a route is beautiful, accessible and easy to recommend, everyone recommends it. And suddenly the problem is not only that more pilgrims arrive, the problem is that they arrive faster than the route can adapt. This is what I mean by the Camino Portuguese bubble. Not that the route is fake, not that the experience is meaningless, but that the expectations are growing faster than the reality on the ground. People arrive expecting quiet paths, flexible planning, easy beds, and a softer Camino, but in certain sections, especially the busiest months, the Portuguese way can feel very, very different. And I'm not even mentioning that the Costa route has another amazing problem which pilgrims don't really expect. You are not only sharing spaces with pilgrims, you are also sharing with summer holidays. This is where the bubble becomes practical. We are competing with holiday makers, beach town, ocean view prices, so the easy, cheaper, calmer Camino can suddenly become expensive, busy and stressful. And this is why planning the Camino Portuguese with the good information matters. This is why we recommend Gronze.com. And if you're planning the Camino this year, Gronze is the one of the tools we use most often when researching the routes, accommodation, services and the daily stages. You see, what we particularly like is that it helps you to compare routes realistically before you commit. Because it's only 22 kilometers can mean something very different when the mountain decides to join the conversation. So instead of walking into Camino Portuguese with only a romantic idea in your head, you can walk it with your eyes open, wide open. Even with the good planning, good maps and all the beds booked, there is still one problem that no website can solve for you: the spirit of the Camino. Because the Camino spirit is not automatic. It does not just appear because there is a yellow arrow on the wall. It has to be passed on from pilgrim to pilgrim, from the hospitalero to walker, and from the old pilgrim at the albergue table to a new first timer who still has too much stuff in the backpack and absolutely no idea what's happening. That is how the Camino has always worked. Not through marketing, not through perfect stages, not through GPS tracks or beautiful photos, but through small gestures. Someone saying buen camino, someone sharing the food, someone helping with blisters, and someone asking where you started. Sounds silly, but super, super important. And this is where the Portuguese way sometimes feels different. Not worse, simply different, because on some sections, especially the route overlaps their beach tourism, the Camino culture is not always strong yet. When we walked the Portuguese way, it took us 4 days to hear someone saying buen camino first. And the first person who said it wasn't even a pilgrim, it was a local. Now, of course, this is the only our experience. Other people may have a completely different one, but for us, it said something. Because when nobody says buen camino, when nobody talks in the albergues, when everyone walks in their own bubble, when every night is pre-booked, private, separate, and planned like the holiday itinerary, the Camino can start feeling less like a shared pilgrimage and more like a beautiful walking trip to Santiago. And those are not the same things. And I want to be careful here, because there is nothing wrong with enjoying Portugal. Please enjoy it. Eat the pastry, drink the coffee, look at the ocean dramatically like it's a movie trailer. We fully support this level of Camino cinema, but the Camino is not only a beautiful walking holiday. The Camino becomes the Camino because of how we behave on it. The shell on the backpack does not automatically create the spirit. The stamp in your credential does not automatically create the spirit. Even reaching Santiago does not automatically create the spirit. The spirit is created in little things. How we greet each other, how we share space, how we treat hospitaleros, and how we help someone who is struggling. And this is where the Portuguese way is facing the real tests. Because if thousands of pilgrims arrive looking for the Camino spirit, but nobody has shown them how to practice it, then the route can be full of pilgrims and still feel strangely empty. But this is also the hopeful part, because the Camino spirit is not controlled by statistics, it's not controlled by the tourism office, algorithms, guidebooks, or how many people started in Porto this year. The Camino spirit is carried by pilgrims, which means it is not something we only receive, it is something we continue. So if you walk the Portuguese way, don't wait for someone else to create the Camino spirit for you. Say buen camino first, start the conversation, share the table, ask someone where they started, be kind to the hospitaleros, help the confused pilgrims staring on the phone like Google Maps has personally betrayed them. Stay in albergues sometimes if you can, not because the private rooms are bad, they are not. Sometimes the private room is exactly what saves your feet, your sleep and possibly your marriage. But the old Camino wisdom often passes in the simple places: dormitories, shared kitchens, communal dinners, benches outside of the albergues. You see those little spaces where strangers become pilgrims together. And if we lose all of that, then the Camino does not disappear, but something precious becomes harder to find. And maybe this is the real test for the Camino Portuguese now.